All right, welcome everyone. This is You Know Who, David Morgan from themorganreport.com. And we did the crypto conspiracy series. I think we're up to 29. Lots of feedback, lots of yes and no's. I agree, I disagree. But one thing I can say is that our most popular, most re-requested guest was Kurt Wuckert. And I delayed having Kurt on the series because I wanted to get as much information that I felt was relevant and true, and then bounce it against Kurt to say, did I miss something? Was I wrong? Where was I wrong? You know, that type of thing. And pretty much said, nope, you guys hit it pretty hard. You got the basic points correct. So since we last talked, Kurt, what the heck's going on with Bitcoin? Is there anything new?
Oh, man. Well, it's been probably a year. So there's a whole bunch going on. I think the big thing, so the NFT craze was a big part of what made Ethereum blow up 2 years ago. Like Ethereum and DeFi NFTs, it was a whole thing. Everybody's trading JPEGs because they're rare or they're scarce, which is pretty crazy because in Ethereum specifically, you can't store data in the blockchain as a database. So you would store your artwork on a place like Amazon Web Service or maybe IPFS or you know, wherever. It's a very internet-based thing. Like, where do you store an image if it's on a website? You store it in some content delivery system, and then they'd issue you a token in Ethereum, and some of these were selling for literally millions of dollars. Yeah. So celebrities were buying JPEGs of apes. Actually, the most valuable things were a Miami-based art project called the Bored Ape Yacht Club. And if you bought one of these JPEGs at to the tune of millions of dollars, you get to be a Bored Ape Yacht Club member. And then it just kind of dried up. And the liquidity was never great anyways. And so when all of a sudden prices crashed, there was no opportunity to exit. And to a lot of people, there was this presumption that the NFT market had gone away. And in many ways it did. The funny thing is that NFTs actually have all kinds of extra utility. Like you can, let's say you make an NFT of your car, and every time you get your car serviced, that updates the NFT. And so there's a global attestation that your car was properly serviced at the dealer and it was certified by X, Y, and Z. And maybe you're adding that extra value to your car, which is stored as a digital twin on the blockchain. Like that would be a utilitarian use of an NFT, but wouldn't you know it, everybody just likes to trade JPEGs and probably launder money using the technology too, but not here necessarily to judge that. But somebody made an interesting discovery in Bitcoin late last year. So in August, the developer by the name of Casey Rodamore came up with this concept that he calls an ordinal inscription. And so what that means, an ordinal is just a different way to count. So you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, or you can call them first, second, third, fourth. And in math, you would call this ordinal counting. And so what he did is he took each individual Satoshi and said, well, let's just count them differently and then give them a numismatic value as if each one was like an individually serialized coin, which they are actually, if you know how Bitcoin works. And so with that, he played some tricks with how data works in Bitcoin and realized I can actually inscribe artwork directly to the token, to the coin. So your individual Bitcoin can essentially be painted with the artwork and stored on the database across the distributed blockchain. And so it can never go away. And so it all of a sudden has all of this extra really interesting value. Because now your artwork is actually as immutable as the blockchain itself. And there's been kind of an explosion of people thinking and rethinking about what are tokens, what is art, what is provenance. Actually, it's funny hearing a lot of people who are digital native, 20 somethings that are really interested in stuff that sounds a lot like gold bugs like yourself or silver bugs in your situation, but talking about tokens and Satoshis and Bitcoins the way that somebody 50 years ago might talk about the numismatic value of a special coin. And it's truly created an explosion where there are coins now, like little sats, which would be worth less than a penny, that are selling for tens of thousands of dollars because they are painted, for lack of a better term. They use the word inscribed, but it's inscribed with this extra value, and whatever art is atop that Satoshi, and it's made mining more profitable. It's given people something more valuable to trade, and it's actually undermined a lot of the presumptions about what makes Bitcoin valuable in the first place. That there's this like very weird sound money cult around Bitcoin that I think is much more valid when talking about things like actual precious metals, but they talk about Bitcoin as this replacement for them. But what we've done is say that, hey, artwork has its own value. There's an artistic value. There can be an extra numismatic value that is added to a coin that then gives it this, we've seen literally exponential value added to the coin itself. And now it's created an explosion of a bunch of new thought. So I would say that is probably the most significant new thing in Bitcoin in probably 5 years. It's really stirred the pot. A lot of the people that were very steadfast influencers and they have these very strong opinions about things are having people just, I mean, they're getting laughed off stage. There's a little bit of a civil war brewing in the background, I think. So we could see some fireworks in the Bitcoin space over the next few months or years as this perhaps becomes a toxic new development, as most things in Bitcoin do.
Well, let me pause you there. And I'm going to try to walk you through, which means I'm giving you feedback, see if I understood it completely.
Yep.
But you could take something as small as a Satoshi. I could put my handsome face on there and call Morgan number one. And one of my fans says, shit, I'm going to pay $400 for that thing. Am I right?
Exactly. They might pay $4 million for it, frankly. Because the cool thing about the ordinal numbering system is that it has an ordinal number and an inscription number. And there's a lot of weird number nerds in Bitcoin too. So if you get like inscription number 696969, people might say, well, that's really valuable because that's my lucky number. So there's weird number trading and stuff going on too. And then you get the people who are, oh my gosh, I've got a sub 10,000 inscription number and that kind of thing. And so it's very interesting, but yes.
I have to digress there, Kurt, just for a moment. But most of my videos, you can see my GATA print, and I think there are 500, and mine is 249. Now I didn't get to pick the number, but I was thrilled because I'm from the Bay Area, which is the 49ers. But more important than that, the gold rush started in 1849. So since I own it and it's got that number, it's got to be more valuable than the next.
There you go. And that's exactly it. Humans are so weird in the patterns that we see and the things that we value. So it's just one more thing. It's like your low number baseball card or exactly that, like a rare serial number out of the New York Mint or something. So yeah.
Well, I want to move on, and thank you for that. That is very exciting. It's something that you educated me on. I had no idea, but thank you. And I know you're not the coin geek for nothing, and I really enjoy visiting with you. So where are we? I'm going to give you the question I get every time, and that is, we hit the around 20,000 low. I mean, as you probably recall, John Perez and I said, this is it for Bitcoin for a while, and somewhere around the 67, 66,000 mark, came all the way down to around 20.
Yeah.
And then it got a bit and started moving up, and now we're 30-ish or maybe above it today. I don't check it every day.
Yeah.
So is this a real rally? Is this a bear trap? I know that's a real hard one to answer. I know that because I get asked all. What are your thoughts about it?
I do think it's a trap. So it's last I checked, and it's been a few hours. BTC is now lost about $1,000 a coin. It was a pretty significant drop. It's under 30K, which is one of those mental spots where, oh my gosh, the bulls are back. And I think it's significant that it fell below 30K pretty quickly. It didn't even hold above for 48 hours. And you got to ask, who are the people who have money right now to be bullish on BTC, who aren't already involved in the economy there?
Right.
Where are we going to get billions of dollars of new money in to really kick off a bull run right now? I mean, interest rates are telling me we've got a recession coming. All the macro stuff, the bank stuff. I mean, we're looking at, the potential for World War III and the BRICS nations taking down the dollar. And, why is this bullish on what is essentially a risk asset in the BTC space? And it sucks, because I would love to say that, oh yeah, it's just better money and you can use it for all these other things, but it is very much still in the risk asset space. I mean, if we're going to war with Russia and China or what, let's talk worst case scenario. I really hope we're not, but if it's going that direction, I'm really going to want like ammunition, water filtration, and probably gold and silver a lot more than I'm going to want my Bitcoin private keys, because it's just it's a higher friction money, especially when the chips are really down. So I don't know. I think it's kind of a sucker rally. I've been thinking that since really day one. I really think the fair price on BTC is quite a bit lower than it has been in a lot of years. And all the geniuses on that side have been saying, hey, it's never going to go below 20K again. And well, it did. It went down to 15K and it stayed there for a little bit. And we've seen a lot of guys make hard reputation promises and fail on it. And I think a lot of it is the failure to get any real adoption in the real economy. And when people start getting hungrier, I mean, we've had a lot of crazy rain here in South Florida, and we've had a little bit of a gas crisis the last week or so. Every single gas station's out of gas.
Oh my.
And I'm pulling up, 5 stations in a row saying, oh man, like this is really, really scary. Just to experience it in my own cushy little life here. And, thankfully I found a place that did have gas, but holy cow, it literally showed me that I'm about 1 week away from not having a vehicle if those supply lines get cut. And I'll tell you what, Bitcoin's not solving my problems right then and there. Not nearly as well as it could if I go walk in or go to a neighbor, somebody that's got extra gas, and say, hey, how about some silver? How about some gold? How about some ammo? How about some food and water or some other service? Like me, even now, even 15 years into the Bitcoin experiment, me offering Bitcoin to somebody at the gym. If there's 30 people in the gym, I say, hey, who here can receive Bitcoin easily right now? It's probably going to be nobody. Maybe 1 or 2 if we're lucky. And that doesn't work in a crisis. So,
well, I appreciate you being that candid, and that was my question. You already answered it, but I was going to say, where do you rank Bitcoin versus the other assets? You already did that. I want to talk about something that I get a lot of pushback on, and I'm not really. I have to be honest. I have XRP in the speculative side. I still think it's viable. I think it's fast. I think it does its job. And I've just not did it because someone talked to me about it. I read it, right. I looked at it, and I did listen to people as smart as you about it. But one thing that struck me yesterday was that the UK uses it. It's not XRP. They use Ripple, if I understood it correctly. And the time, I think, was 3 seconds or something to settle a transaction. They pointed out in this article that Bitcoin was like 45 minutes. So what are your thoughts on XRP? I know you probably know something about it more than me, probably.
Yeah, for sure. So Ripple's a really interesting company, first of all. Ripple, the company, actually precedes the creation of Bitcoin. In fact, Satoshi Nakamoto, I don't know if it was his opening statement, but definitely the first day that Satoshi introduced Bitcoin, he actually mentions Ripple and explains why Bitcoin is a better option than Ripple for various things. And I think it's really funny because we just still to this day haven't really tried to compete with Ripple on the things that Ripple wants to be good at, which is primarily intra-bank settlement, right. Small payments and large payments, large liquidity, to basically disrupt the kind of transactions that we don't really see, the things like wire, ACH, those sorts of things. And then also the underpinnings of things like MoneyGram and Western Union. It's funny, though, because Ripple and MoneyGram created a strategic alliance or some kind of strategic venture 4 or 5 years ago. It was a pretty big piece of news when it happened. And they have since quietly sunset their relationship because Ripple didn't really do what they said it was going to do. And I say this from a transaction speed and trustability standpoint. So the announcement of the end of their partnership was quite a bit quieter than the announcement of the beginning of their partnership. But Ripple, I struggle because there's not really a reason for Ripple, the coin, to actually exist. Like, Ripple's technology as a company is good technology. It does, in a very basic sense, what it says it will do. But adding in the cryptocurrency aspect of the XRP coin, it's done little else but enrich the people at Ripple, which is why the SEC sued them about 2 years ago. It's been a giant, is this an unregistered illegal security offering? And that's still unclear. We don't know. It's been a very long process. I tend to think that the SEC is correct in that XRP likely is a security, but I've been wrong before. On the total flip side, so Bitcoin, this one's hard because if you can break Bitcoin into a basket of different things, like Bitcoin, when people think of the asset, the BTC asset is completely insufficient. Like you said, it's 10 minutes to get a single confirmation. They tell you it's between 45 and 60 minutes before you can really trust a very large transaction. And so is that good for global settlement? And I would argue that is not. However, if you take the protocol of Bitcoin and separate it from the asset of BTC versus, I'm a big fan of the BSV asset version of Bitcoin. Very different story. It has quite a bit less hash power, which most people would tell you would make it less secure. But it also it also has miners, like the nodes on the network of which I'm one. I run a mining pool on BSV that add extra guarantees. They do things the way that a regular business would. So if you send money through MoneyGram, they insure that up to a certain amount, right? So
Right.
As a sort of intermediary in the Bitcoin economy, we do the same thing. If there's some failure, I'm not afraid to call the insurance policy or say, "Hey, we screwed up. We'll just rebroadcast it. We'll do it again." It's a very active relationship that miners on the BSV blockchain have with their Bitcoin network. Versus on BTC, it's everything's on cruise control. Nobody's monitoring it. They believe they've designed it in such a way to where it is bulletproof, but they've done that by throttling its bandwidth and making it insufficient for all kinds of things. And then they say, it's just on cruise control. It can't go fast enough for it to spin out of control. And so, but it also makes it not useful for anything that requires like a little extra brain power. So with BSV, like there's not a reason that you can't do 100,000 transactions a second. They're instant. They're instantly secure. They propagate the network within 2 seconds. If we see a valuable transaction or any size transaction, you see it within 2 seconds. Why would I not mind that transaction? I want the trust in the network to grow, and therefore I'm incentivized to do that. So all that to say, I think the best argument might be that there's no blockchain that is all the way ready to do all the stuff that Ripple claims that it could. But I'm literally betting with my reputation and my own dollars in building a business that if any of them can, it will be BSV, and it'll be because of the work that we put into it. So that's my long answer to your question about XRP and sort of that use case over there, like bank settlement and stuff.
Oh, we went through BSV on the first interview, and I really would like to dive deep there, but I'm not. I might do it a separate interview if you give me
Sure.
the time. Won't be today. What is your thoughts? And this is, this is a crypto conspiracy, so I can say darn near anything. But the idea that, SVB, Signature, I mean, these banks were pretty crypto related, at least in a lot of ways. And this theory is that, the bankers are going down. It's inevitable. Yet it seems as if you could make the argument they're taking out some pretty integral crypto type of banks to begin with, which leads to the idea that maybe they just want this out of the way and say, those bad boys, CBDC, good boys, we're regulated, you're not, you're DeFi, we're controlled.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that scenario?
I think I think there's just like a lot of things. There's a couple of factions when it comes to, who are the banks, right? And there's a big difference between a Deltec or a Signature Bank versus your Bank of America or JP Morgan Chase. Very different people, different ideals, different ideas about what the next 10 years are supposed to look like. And then you add in the competitive aspects of, hey, I want to win and I want them to lose. And so it's similar when it comes down to regulators and things. Like a guy like Gary Gensler, for example, at the SEC, he's really sharp. Like he is not an ignorant, old man who doesn't get the technology. Gary Gensler really, really gets the technology. I am shocked every time I hear him speak about blockchain. I want to criticize him, and then I hear him talk, and I'm like, well, he's right. So then what? I think one of the things that we need to admit in the blockchain space is that we've really let the opportunity slip away from us in a lot of ways. In 2008, Bitcoin made a really great argument for simple payments, electronic cash, and saving the world with data sovereignty and sovereignty of money. And it was a really compelling idea. But every time somebody came up with a new idea in the meantime, then the Bitcoin idea gets a little less compelling. So this is your Venmo or your Zelle or your WeChat Pay, or now there's different ones in every country. Frankly, you can go to Norway and they all use some chat app that they use as a cash. And Bitcoin has really failed to disrupt payments in many regards, even in a place like El Salvador, where they've claimed, well, it's legal tender and it's all these things and Bitcoin Beach exists. And you look at the actual value transferred and the actual number of transactions, and it's a very pitiful number. It is less than 1% of all transactions in the country, including in the wealthy places where that might be deemed a good idea to do. And so because of that, I think there's been a really hard pivot toward the investability of a scarce asset. It's turned into, well, it's digital gold or it's digital computation. And, in the case of some of these other altcoins and things, and people are just trying to sell coins as if you were selling weird penny stocks. And that's given sort of degenerate gambler types something to do on the weekends when the markets are closed. And to be fair, that is its own utility, but it's a zero-sum game, and it's not really making anybody's lives better unless you just so happen to either get very lucky or you're very, very predatory in the market. And, then it just kind of hands it over to the regulators. At some point, you have to look at the SEC and FINRA, and I, as a libertarian, look at it and say, oh, God, investor protections are really just a veil for controlling, middle America. But in reality, when you see in crypto, it's like, well, 95% of all fundraisers end up being exit scams. Well, it's very difficult for me to make the case then that, no, don't worry, we're creating all kinds of value that'll ultimately, show the world that we were the good guys. And it's super, super upsetting to me to have to admit that in many ways, it really is just, it's a traveling circus. And it's a traveling circus that is there to rob the local town and then move on again. And it's no good. It's no good for any of us. We really had a chance to do some amazing things, and we've basically just let greed and really good marketing line the pockets of the most Machiavellian people in the space, and we've really done little else. So it really sucks.
Well, I wouldn't say I understand Bitcoin to any level that you do, but I definitely know it better than some of my critics. But, when I wrote that 2 Bits About Bitcoin in 2014, you pretty much outlined what I said back then would happen. If it gets powerful enough, then here comes your friendly regulator.
Yeah.
I want to steer you back to your thoughts on CBDC. Good, bad. Are they going to push crypto to the side and make it, their one and only? And I have comment. I was going to answer my own question. I want you to answer it, and then I'll make a comment.
Sure. I think it's another symptom of exactly what I just said. Like CBDCs wouldn't be in the conversation if Bitcoin had disrupted what it was intended to disrupt. But now that it hasn't, and it's really easy to make the case that it's just a predatory speculative asset, Well, the technology did do all kinds of cool things, and we can just, trust your local central bank. Here's a so, it's
you
like,
and I are the first in line. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, it's the worst of both worlds now.
It
It's everything I hate about blockchain with everything I hate about fiat currency, and then run through a new marketing campaign, and like, good grief, man. We literally fed them dystopia.
Okay, that's well said. There's the Bitcoin maximalist. I still know a few. One probably will never have me back on the show, but I still like him and his girlfriend, wife. But nonetheless, I just cannot see the idea that there's a reason to be a maximalist. Even me, I mean, I'm not like only silver or gold and silver only. I mean, I think real estate's got its place. I think stocks do. I think I'm not a bond guy. I've never really owned them outside of when I worked in the industry, and I had to have some because we were required to buy them. But what's your take? I mean, is there really, can you build a case for me that a Bitcoin maximalist has it right?
I think, it's funny. I'm would consider myself kind of a Bitcoin maximalist myself.
Okay.
But most of the people that call themselves Bitcoin maximalists would call me like a total like Judas traitor. So I'm in a weird position on that question. But in my opinion, Bitcoin, the protocol, is sufficient for global cash, global settlement, a global attestation of truth, all titles, healthcare documents, registration records, everything. Bitcoin is an extremely valuable attestation of the truth about all kinds of things that really, really matter. And that's why I was bullish on it in 2013 when I was first really getting into it. And it's why I remain bullish on the technology and the idea. But to steelman your typical BTC hodl kind of mentality, like, hey, bury your private keys in the backyard kind of thing. It's like like your Michael Saylors. Hey, it's going to go up forever. I just think it's absurd. I think the only way that I could steelman the idea is under the presumption that the entire rest of the universe collapses in on itself. Like if the entire world goes into utter chaos, by all means, you can value it against Bitcoin and say, yeah, Bitcoin went up in value forever. But I really don't want to live in that world at all. And they've sort of positioned themselves into this, hey, if just keep buying Bitcoins and as the world collapses, we just keep going up and up toward being this weird aristocratic class of people that have coins, and everybody that doesn't have Bitcoins is going to be some kind of permanent like serf class. I don't want to live in that world either. And so, even as an insurance policy, sure. Like, should everybody have a little bit of Bitcoin? Yeah, probably. Like it's a reasonable assumption to make if you've got all kinds of other hedges and all kinds of other things figured out in your life. But the way that they've pigeonholed themselves, whether it's they win for competitive reasons or whether they win for reasons that the world has just fallen apart around them, both of those things don't really play out to, the kind of world that I want my children to grow up in. Like they both are either like a militaristic dystopia, or it's some kind of weird new feudal class of coiners versus no coiners. And that's not what Bitcoin was ever supposed to be, but they've sort of demented it into being this thing. And I detest it. I really think it's a moral obligation, frankly, to call it out and to compete against it. So, and this is why they hate me. This is why they would say I am not a Bitcoin maximalist.
Well, I like you, so many ways. And then, for me, when I started the Bitcoin conspiracy, was to look at the other side of the coin, and that's not a metaphor, that's a pun deliberately, because no one was. And I started getting all this information, it made sense, and I verified it. And I kind of got to that tipping point of, well, it's now or never. So I don't speak out now and say this is the top. I'm not going to have that opportunity. And, so I did. Well, I'm going to put the dad hat on. So I've got, so the kids got school loans paid back and they're both working. And now I've got a granddaughter. And so I've got $10,000 to invest. What do you tell them? How much crypto, how much gold, how much silver, hold some in cash? What would you do? This is not financial advice. This is an experimental question.
I think, given the way the world is, I think the first thing is to look at what do people actually need? Because I am not bullish on the Western Hemisphere right now. it's looking pretty grim in a lot of ways. And so if you had 10 grand, man, I don't know. I might invest it in acquiring really useful skills or starting a business or something. Because that much gold or silver really wouldn't get you super far. Same thing with Bitcoin. Same thing with a lot of things. It might make sense to spend it on a Toyota Corolla and go intern with somebody that can teach you real life skills. And the other thing, if you really wanted to invest it in something that is supposed to go up in value, I think something like healthcare and energy, I think are things that, they're going to be in demand in any circumstance. And so if you just needed something to pay you a dividend and go up in value pretty consistently, I think healthcare and energy are probably never going to go away at this point. You could say similar things about computation, maybe even AI and that kind of stuff. There's some opportunity there that I think is big, but it's so early. I think it would be really difficult to invest in or it'd be really easy to invest in the wrong thing and just lose everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think everybody should have a little bit of a lot of things. But the most important thing, the thing that I would go heaviest in is a useful skill set. The ability to grow food or repair a car or, those kinds of things are super valuable if the world is going to start getting weirder and weirder. And we're teetering on some weird times, I think.
I agree. I'll use your term, weird times, totally in line with that thinking. I love the fact you're outside the box. It wasn't anything you threw in the box. It wasn't Bitcoin, gold, silver, or bonds or stocks. And that's great. And I agree that we are going to have to be more self-reliant. And that's going to give us not only some personal pride, satisfaction, job well done, whatever you want to call it. But I think this whole globalization thing peaked a while back. I think as this thing, gets pushed more and more by the weffers and the rest of these idiots, that's my opinion, that we're going to go more down to our communities. And, if you got a food scarcity, if you go back, I don't want to make this too long an introduction, but, when I was a kid, you never got grapes in December. You got grapes when they grew grapes.
Right.
And so what do you think? Do you think the expansion of this globalism is already bust and it's really contracting back to nation states or communities?
To a degree. I think a certain amount of it is absolutely the case. I think with our communications technology and really truly, I'm still a little bit hopeful for Bitcoin in general, but if we can do a global business in a way that reduces borders and kind of gets rid of the sort of weird landlock or cultural lock problems that we have with people that would otherwise be our neighbors. I don't like the governments of any nation, but I like the people of most of the places I've ever met. So
well said.
But if you look at these opportunities, it's still, why is a place like Malaysia or Taiwan the best place to get a computer built? It's a really weird thing if you think about it, because they're not smarter. They don't have access to better materials or even necessarily better education. If you think about it, like a place like Indiana has access to tons of raw materials that are super useful, really smart people that are capable of working. There's still actually a lot of work that gets done in a place like Indiana. Why couldn't microchips over a 10-year period just be manufactured outside of Indianapolis? And there really isn't a reason except for this crazy geopolitical nonsense that surrounds this weird currency war that we've been having really since Nixon. And if we can get back to just reasonable, just all kinds of things. And, this is a great reset, but not in the sense that Klaus Schwab is thinking about it necessarily. But if we were to have a sort of reset on the way that we think about the global economy, there is no reason why a place like the United States can't be a net exporter of technology products. And the reasons why we can't is a lot of arbitrary laws and a lot of arbitrary regulations. The fact that people are, spending time debating what is a man and what is a woman indicates to me that we are still way too wealthy and way too bored in this country to have real conversations about value. And that's going to regularize. It's just like everything else that goes way up. And the U.S. Freedom Index went way, 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 way up. We deserve a correction, and it sucks, but that correction is likely. And at the same time, we're bringing up the value of everybody. But the world that we're going to live in, I'm not talking about 5 years. I'm talking 100 years, 150 years. I think we rebalance with the whole world on a higher rung than we were at in, say, the 1850s. But it's going to suck for people that came from, I don't want my great grandkids to be like, man, like my great grandparents grew up in a really rich country, and now we're on par with, all these other places, and we, struggle and grow our own food. But I don't think there's anything necessarily negative about that either. I think it would be a good thing for us to have a more balanced, view of the way that people do work and what is a valuable job to do. And hey, we grow our own garden, we have our own animals, and we still have a lot of high tech stuff. Maybe we have AI access to, helping us do this stuff really well. And, the other lessons that we've learned throughout the industrial and the tech revolution. But ultimately, we do need to produce what we're consuming, right, and it needs to come into balance. And the U.S. is way out of balance with the rest of the world right now. And I think it's just going to be forced to come back there. And so that's where I'm at on it. Yeah.
That's great. I'm very fond, and I've said it on many of my interviews, that nature preaches balance. And not to offend anybody, but it probably will. But when you're struggling for food, or food prices double from here, a lot of pronouns are not a big problem. You don't have to worry about the pronoun if you're in line to get more food,
Yep.
And that's where we're at. I couldn't agree more, in the movie The Four Horsemen that, I was in, and it's not about me being in it. Far better intellects than mine were in that movie, but it talked about the cycle of decadence, really, and the end of the age of empire. At the top, there's an overemphasis on things that really don't matter, like chefs. I love a good food like anybody, but I mean, when they're idolized, when there's a whole TV series on, I don't even know them. I don't watch much TV, but there's this chef and all that stuff. Overemphasis on sex. All this stuff is taking place, and it's having it too good. What's the expression that in hard times make hard men, and overabundance make weak men, or whatever? And we're seeing that as well, in my opinion.
Yep.
So I think we've covered almost everything I want to on this one. I do want to ask you privately one thing when we're off air, but
sure.
If there's anything I haven't asked, would you please go into that now? And if you think we've covered enough, you just do a bit of a summary for me. And the main point of the summary is, where do you see crypto in, say, 5 years?
Sure. I think we are at an inflection point on Bitcoin, the blockchain technology and stuff. It's been around for 15 years. We've seen AI just over the last 6 months go from fringe science idea to something that the average person is using in their actual workflow for $20 a month. I work in a tech office, and so I'm in like a co-working space. And most of the developers that I'm working with use ChatGPT in a window that never closes now.
Wow.
And, that's something that actually has added a net positive, a very big net positive to business in a very short amount of time. And at some point, if Bitcoin doesn't do that to the economy at large, then I kind of don't think any of it will. Like, maybe blockchain was just a bad idea. And that would be, again, really upsetting, because it really was a very big opportunity to increase freedom, reduce business friction, and do a whole bunch of other things. But we've wasted a lot of time, and I think there is still time to pull this off. Again, I'm still I'm the CEO of GorillaPool.com. Like, we are mining hard. We've got millions of dollars of infrastructure invested in what I think is the future of everything. But you got to hedge against it too. You have to always have a way out under the presumption that you could be wrong. And that's actually what I love about the precious metals people, is that Bitcoiners, for whatever reason, seem to see precious metals people as some kind of enemy in some investment race. And I just think it's absurd. I think it's absurd to not to not have a big chunk of tech in your portfolio and then a big chunk of stuff that has been valuable for thousands of years, because I don't know how else people sleep at night. I really don't. So that's my thoughts on it. But invest in skills. I think all of it. Like, if you lose everything, like maybe you get robbed, like how do you get it back? What investments do you have if you lose everything? Can you go get a job the next day because you have a bunch of skills? And if the answer is yes, then you're never really all the way out of the game. So that's it. So, also, thanks for having me. It's good to be back.
Well, I know you're on Twitter a lot, and I do tag you, I guess is the word.
Sure.
Usually if it's related to the crypto space or what the government regulators are doing in the blockchain arena. And I'd like to do that because I like to stay in touch. So tell us any way to contact you, but I would guess that Twitter's probably one of the best places.
Twitter's a good spot. Yeah, I'm at Kurt Wuckert Jr. Basically everywhere. So any social media platform, you can find me at that handle. I do answer my DMs. They keep getting deeper and deeper, so I apologize if it takes a little bit of time, but I do answer all of my DMs and make a lot of content. So I appreciate anybody that shares it, retweets it. Helps me get the word out is really helpful.
All right. Thank you so much.
For sure. Thank you.